Part 32. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yanyun Yuchi. Chapter 311. Sangwo Village. Since the injury to the soul was not very serious, after a short period of meditation and breath adjustment, the impact of the injury on the soul's strength had been eliminated. At the same time, considering that Yanguo's Hung is waiting for news about him. Therefore, when Zhang Fengjai opened his eyes after finishing healing and took out his mobile phone to contact Yanguo's Hung, he happened to hear Pan Switting talking about the steak and red wine that Garcia had given her at noon. Thinking of Garcia's conspiracy to give away red wine, and of Pan Switting's ignorance of people's sinister nature and easy belief in the actions of strangers, he decided to use this dangerous lesson to give her an unforgettable warning to prevent her from being deceived in the future. Zhang Fengjai, are you okay? When she heard Zhang Fengjai's interrogating voice, Pan Switting turned around suddenly and asked in surprise. After nodding, Zhang Fengjai continued the previous question. Shueting, you haven't answered my question just yet. Isn't it because the male waiter named Xiao Yi was too rude and reckless that Garcia made an apology sincerely? Pan Switting guessed smartly. He. In response to this, Zhang Fengjai asked with a sneer. Shueting, just because of the verbal humiliation of a male waiter, she gave away top-notch steak worth thousands and a bottle of 82 Philo red wine worth up to 38,000 yuan for free. Are we great people, or is Garcia a prodigal who has money but no place to spend it? Although he doesn't like or know much about red wine, the 5 large refrigerators on the first floor of Zhu Zhenjun's villa contain at least 7 or 8 types of hundreds of bottles of red wine. Among them, the largest quantity is 82 Philo red wine. This is not only one of the few red wines he has drunk, but also the only red wine for which he knows the accurate price. The 1982 Philo red wine was actually worth 38,000 yuan per bottle, far exceeding the expected price. Pan Switting suddenly didn't know how to answer Zhang Fengjai's question. Ignoring Pan Switting's speechlessness, Zhang Fengjai continued to question. Shueting, you and Garcia have never met each other, nor have they had any interactions or conversations, so how did he find the exact room you rented and knock you out easily and take you away? There's something wrong with that bottle of 82 Philo red wine. The authorities are confused, but the bystanders know clearly. After hearing Zhang Fengjai's 2 questions in succession, the shrewd Wan Ran immediately guessed the key points of the questions, and then proactively answered them for Pan Switting. That's right. Looking up at the beautiful girl who answered first, Zhang Fengjai's eyes flashed with a look of surprise, and while nodding in confirmation, he added further. Because Garcia cast a special evil energy in that bottle of red wine. Through this special evil energy, he can accurately find the person who drank the red wine. Zhang Fengjai's further explanation solved the reason why Garcia appeared in the rental house, but it also made Pan Switting feel uncomfortable inside. At the same time, because of the special emotional influence on him in her heart, Pan Switting couldn't help but ask directly. Zhang Fengjai, since you already knew that there was something wrong with that bottle of red wine, why didn't you take the initiative to remind me then? Shueting, this guy named Garcia is a vampire from the Unfallen Empire. He is far stronger than me. Zhang Fengjai, who had long expected that Pan Switting would question him about the red wine, so he thought of countermeasures in advance, immediately pretended to be helpless and explained with a wry smile. If I had taken the initiative to remind him at that time, combined with the fact that there were no customers in the entire Western restaurant, it would have definitely caused Garcia to turn his back on the spot. Without any preparation in advance, there is only one result for Garcia's betrayal on the spot, and that is that I will be killed directly and you will be sucked out of your blood. Besides, it wasn't like I didn't have any reminders at the time. Because I clearly knew that the Western restaurant was a place for drinking red wine, but I unreasonably asked the police officer to buy white wine. I was secretly reminding you that there was something wrong with the red wine that Garcia gave you. This The explanation Zhang Fengjie gave completely eliminated Pan Switing's inner discomfort, but the hints mentioned later made her feel depressed and aggrieved. After all, in the environment of a Western restaurant, who would have thought that the reason why he rudely asked for liquor was actually a secret reminder to himself? Shueting, from now on when you go out, you must never accept any gift from a stranger, no matter how valuable the gift is, no matter how much you like the gift. Ignoring Pan Switing's depressed and aggrieved look, Zhang Jiyi warned solemnly. Because I cannot guarantee that every time you encounter fatal danger, you will be able to help as soon as possible. Zhang Fengjie, don't worry, I'll remember it. Pan Switing, with a look of gratitude in her eyes, nodded vigorously and agreed. Now that Pan Switing had realized her mistake, Zhang Fengjie didn't say anything more. He lowered his head to find Yang Qiaoshen's phone number on his phone. After dialing the number, he told him how he captured Garcia alive and the exact location. Garcia slowly calmed down and his breathing became normal. But at this moment, a voice of gentle self-introduction suddenly sounded in his ears, and a slender jade-like hand stretched out in front of him. Hello, my surname is Zhongli and my given name is Wan Ran. Nice to meet you. When Zhang Fengjie heard Wan Ran's self-introduction, he looked up at the beautiful girl whose appearance far surpassed Pan Switing's and whose temperament was slightly quiet and elegant, and couldn't help but sigh. There is a girl alone, Wan Ran is on the bed. She is a rare and beautiful flower, and she is virtuous and bright. Sima Zhangruo's Ode to Beauty, Zhongli. Wan Ran smiled and said the source of the poem he just sighed about. Hello, my surname is Zhang, my name is Fengjie, and I am also very happy to meet you. While holding Zhongli Wan Ran's slender jade hand, Zhang Fengjie also smiled and introduced himself. The maple leaves fall by the river and the chrysanthemums turn yellow. The young and the old climbed up to see the hometown. Although the Tao family carried wine on the 9th day, the Chu guest had been wet for 3 years. Zhang Fengjie was able to find the origin of his name in the first time, which also allowed Zhongli Wan Ran, who likes classical literature, to quickly find the source of Zhang Fengjie's name. Finally, when he just finished introducing himself, Zhongli Wan Ran accurately said the poem representing his name. Kui Kuavio's 9 days, Zhang Fengjie also smiled and pointed out the source of the poem. Then, when their eyes met, they suddenly felt like close friends. Ahem. Zhang Fengjie and Zhongli Wan Ran stared at each other and refused to separate. Pan Switing felt a little uncomfortable and coughed lightly, reminding the two to pay attention to the impact. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 312. Sangguo Village. Pan Switing's dissatisfied cough made Zhang Fengjie and Zhongli smile at each other and at the same time cast their eyes on the unconscious Garcia. Looking at Garcia, whose face was as pale as paper, and recalling the huge wings of flesh that stretched out from his back just now, she felt a shock of shattering faith, which made her ask a little hard to accept. Zhang Fengjie, are there really vampires in this world? Wan Ran, a living example is in front of you. Do you think there are vampires in this world? Zhang Fengjie asked with a smile, pointing at Garcia who was about to wake up. Zhang Fengjie's rhetorical question completely shattered Zhongli Wan Ran's atheistic belief that she had always adhered to, but her optimistic and open-minded personality allowed her to instantly establish a new theistic belief. Just when her new belief was re-established, she immediately thought of the rice dramas and Bulogo dramas she had watched during school, and couldn't help but ask with curiosity and expectation. Zhang Fengjie, according to the plots I read in novels and TV series, vampires not only have an immortal lifespan, but they can also turn into identical vampires after being bitten by them. Is this a fabrication or is it real? Wan Ran, vampires are a mysterious alien race belonging to the West. Whether it is the way of cultivation or the structure of the body, they are different from our Chinese monks and monsters. So, I don't know very well whether some of the legends about vampires are true. After the smile on his face was gradually replaced by doubt, Zhang Fengjai shook his head and explained. But life, death, illness, and death are the laws of nature. Even monks like us with special abilities, even monsters with long lifespans, will eventually be unable to escape the reincarnation of the laws of nature. I think the legend of immortality should be a fiction. However, just as he finished questioning the authenticity of the vampire rumors, Garcia, who suddenly opened his eyes, suddenly refuted and tempted. Little girl, what you just said is true. Our noble gentleman's vampire not only has an immortal lifespan and never-aging youth, but as long as he gets our first embrace, he can also get what a vampire has. Everything. Juan ran, don't believe his lies. When Garcia suddenly woke up and offered the temptation of eternal life that no one in the world could refuse, Zhang Fengjai's face changed slightly and he quickly reminded him. Yezi, I'm just interested in the legend of vampires, it doesn't mean I'm willing to become a blood-sucking monster, so don't worry. After turning his head and giving Zhang Fengjai a reason to feel relieved, Zhongli looked into Garcia's dark blue eyes and asked. Vampires, are the vampire plots performed in rice dramas and below dramas real? Little girl, do you want to know? Garcia asked with a smile. Of course, Zhongli Wanran nodded vigorously. Then just come here and I'll tell you in a low voice, Garcia said with a cold light in his eyes, his voice full of magic temptation. As if tempted by Garcia's voice, Zhongli lowered his head and slowly approached Garcia. At the same time, he quietly made a gesture to Zhang Fengjai, who was originally planning to stop him. On the pink and white neck, it was less than 10 centimeters away from Garcia. Just when Garcia's breathing gradually began to get heavier and he was about to launch an attack, Zhongli Wanran suddenly retracted his head and asked with a hint of sarcasm in his eyes. Vampire, did you just want to take the opportunity to bite my neck, drink my blood, and then use this to break free of the leaf spell on your heart? Zhongli Wanran's bold and careful provocation and meticulous observation not only made Garcia, who was teased, feel very angry, but also made Zhang Fengjai's eyes reveal a look of complicated thinking. Damn woman, don't let me escape, otherwise, I will definitely use my first embrace to turn you into a vampire, and then you will serve and obey me forever. Okay. Faced with Garcia's angry threats, Zhongli Wanran not only showed no fear at all, but instead continued to excite the general with a smile. Vampire, as long as you can get rid of the talisman attached to your heart by the leaf, then I will do whatever you ask me to do, and I will never frown. Hateful. Zhongli Wanran's repeated teasing and provocation made Garcia curse angrily, and then began to use dark forbidden magic, intending to forcibly conflict with the spell that sealed the heart, and then regain control of the powerful power of the vampire. With the use of forbidden magic, the pair of flesh wings that had been retracted back into the body re-expanded, and two sharp teeth that were 6 to 7 centimeters long protruded from the corners of the mouth. At the same time, his originally handsome appearance became ferocious and terrifying. The terrifying change that Garcia suddenly showed made Zhongli scream. At the same time, he crawled directly to Zhang Fengjai, hugged his arm, and said with a frightened expression. Yezi, deal with him quickly, don't let him escape the seal of the spell. Zhongli Wanran acted too evil at first, which made Zhang Fengjai have to suspect that her origin might be related to the hidden inheritance family. At this moment, her fearful and helpless expression was considered a normal reaction for an ordinary girl. So, when all his doubts were gone, he turned around to comfort Zhongli Wanran that she didn't need to worry or be afraid, and explained that he had the means to control Garcia, but he unexpectedly saw a scene that made his blood boil and his nose bleed. Because Zhongli Wanran, who was wearing a thin and loose pajamas, was in a vacuum state without any protective measures, which made the two tall and round peaks completely exposed in front of him. Although the jokes on the internet say, good-looking skins are all the same, and interesting souls are 1 in 100, but what about the real situation? Good-looking skins are not all the same, and the visual impact they bring to people is even more different. Zhang Fenjai's silence without any response made Zhongli Wanran couldn't help but turn her head to take a look, and then she saw Zhang Fenjai with the red face and where his eyes were looking. When she paid attention to her vacuum privacy and was completely exposed in front of Zhang Fenjai, the complex emotions of shame, panic, anger, and pride that suddenly emerged in her heart made her immediately reach out to cover the vacuum privacy, and stared at Zhang Fenjai fiercely and asked, "Zhang Fenjai, I am a very traditional and conservative girl. Since you just saw the privacy that I shouldn't have seen, you must be responsible for me to the end. Wanran, please don't be angry. I really didn't mean to see it just now. Just accidentally seeing the other person's private parts, but in the end, he had to be responsible for it as before." This made Zhang Fenjai, who already had Solitsi, feel at a loss and hurried to explain. "You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuchi. Chapter 313. Sangwo Village. I don't listen, I don't care, anyway, you are taking advantage of me and I am at a disadvantage, so you should be responsible for me to the end." Faced with Zhang Fenjai's apology and explanation, Zhongli Wanran covered her ears with both hands and shook her head vigorously, and continued to ask him to be responsible to the end in a somewhat unreasonable manner. "Miss Wanran, I already have a girlfriend I love deeply, and I have been recognized and blessed by the elders in my family, so I can't give you the responsibility and results you want." In response, Zhang Fenjai felt even more depressed and helpless, and could only take out the trump card in the end, hoping that Zhongli Wanran would give up the idea of pursuing responsibility. "If you choose to give in, I can compensate you in other ways." "What kind of conditions?" Zhongli Wanran hurriedly asked. A promise that will never expire, a promise that does not violate my will," Zhang Fenjai said solemnly. "Yezi, this is what you promised me." Zhongli Wanran, who immediately smiled with joy on his face, immediately put aside the confirmation of his responsibility. "Yes, I agreed on my own initiative." In fact, the moment Zhang Fenjai saw Zhongli Wanran's smile, he knew that he had fallen into the trap of the other party, and the other party had no intention of letting him take responsibility to the end. She just wanted to take advantage of the exposure in the vacuum state just now, and then use her guilty psychology to fight for the conditions she wanted. If I obey her request to take responsibility to the end just now and take advantage of her further, I am afraid she will take the initiative to retreat. However, who made me too kind and simple, did not discover the conspiracy of the other party in time, and took the initiative to jump into the trap set by the other party, and could only helplessly and depressedly admit defeat. Yezi, if you feel unhappy, I can let you continue to take advantage of a little. Seeing Zhang Fenjai's depressed look, Zhongli Wanran not only did not feel the slightest guilt, but couldn't help wanting to continue teasing, and took the initiative to let go of the right hand covering the collar. In this regard, Zhang Fenjai, who had been deceived and suffered losses, how could he foolishly continue to jump into the trap of the other party? However, his depressed and unhappy mood made him unable to resist and fight back when facing Zhongli Wanran's aggressive provocation. "I have no interest in a flat airport." Airport. Looking down at his proud twin peaks, he was described by Zhang Fenjai as a flat airport. Zhongli Wanran, who felt nakedly humiliated, suddenly raised his chest and head to prove himself, but suddenly heard Garcia's angry roar. "Damn Chinese monkeys, you dare to ignore the great Count Garcia. Next, let you really see the power of our noble blood race." Dark forbidden magic originated from the powerful heritage of the blood race. Even the cardinals of the church and the silver-level crusader knights would never dare to neglect or despise it. But Zhang Fenjai and Zhongli Wanran's flirting just now was a naked trampling and contempt for the dignity of the blood race. How could Garcia not feel furious? Along with Garcia's angry roar, a jet of black gas appeared out of thin air and enveloped him directly, which not only made Zhongli Wanran panic and grab Zhang Fengjai directly, but also made Pan Switing, who had been silent, flash a hint of surprise in her eyes. When the jet black gas covering Garcia gradually dissipated, Garcia, who was originally nearly 1.9 meters tall, handsome, and gentlemanly, was replaced by a huge black bat. Flapping his huge flesh wings and soaring into the air, Garcia, who turned into a black bat, threatened arrogantly. "Damn human, tremble as much as you can. Fear as much as you can. Because my great blood descendant, Count Garcia, will bring down the wrath of my ancestors, punish you with the fire of hell, burn your flesh, and make your blood boil." Facing Garcia's threat, Zhang Fengjai's eyes flashed with a hint of disdain, and Zhongli Wanran's eyes were filled with endless fear. But Pan Switing not only did not hide the surprise in her eyes, but took the initiative to stand up, walked directly in front of Zhang Fengjai and Zhongli Wanran, then knelt on one knee on the cold concrete floor, respectfully asking Garcia. "Great Count Garcia, Switing is willing to accept your first embrace and become your most loyal subject." Pan Switing's sudden willingness to accept the first embrace to become a vampire, and her initiative to pledge allegiance to Garcia, made Zhang Fengjai feel a burst of incredible astonishment at first, and then a surge of anger like a raging sea surged in his heart. Because he knew that the eccentric Zhongli Wanran, although she rejected Garcia's temptation of immortality and eternal youth, but Pan Switing, who was always full of inferiority in her heart and experienced the powerful ghost, coveted everything that vampires had, including immortal life, eternal youth, the ability to fly, and the power of dark magic. But more importantly, when Garcia seemed to have successfully escaped and had an absolute advantage, she took the initiative to kneel down and pledge her loyalty without caring about her own safety and feelings. This was a complete slap in the face and betrayal. "Shueting, what are you doing?" Zhongli Wanran, who also felt unbelievable, immediately shouted in a stern voice. "Wanran, during the 4 years of college and the half-year of renting and working, although you have always acted very ordinary in front of me, I can clearly see that all of this is deliberately disguised by you, just to take care of my feelings." Facing Zhongli Wanran's harsh scolding, Pan Switing slowly turned around and said with a hint of envy in her eyes. "Because your white and tender skin, your knowledgeable knowledge, and your confidence in facing any setbacks calmly can prove that your family is extraordinary, but what about me, Pan Switing? Ordinary children from poor rural areas can only rely on part-time work to barely finish college, and then work carefully for others, with a meager salary that can barely support their lives every month, and they are afraid of losing their jobs if they are not careful. Besides, I don't know when this kind of life will end." After the envy in her eyes was replaced by jealousy and unwillingness, Pan Switing glanced at Zhang Fengjai, who had a gloomy face, and gradually shouted fiercely in a tone. "Wanran, I don't have a wealthy family background to rely on. Yezi, I don't have your ability to turn decay into magic. If I want to improve my poor life, change the fate of the bottom of society, and take back love from others, I can only rely on the power beyond the world. Even if I become a blood-sucking monster for this, I will not hesitate." The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuchi. Chapter 314. Sangwo Village. When Zhang Fengjai heard Pan Switing's reason for choosing to become a vampire, the raging anger in his heart was gradually replaced by helplessness and disappointment. Helplessness is because after more than 2 months of secular experience, he has a very dissatisfied mood about the polarization of the rich and the poor and the solidified class hierarchy in the real society, but he can only watch helplessly and is powerless to change it. Disappointment is about Pan Switing's wrong choice of ideas and means to change her fate. But no matter whether it is helplessness or disappointment, he does not want a good girl with a kind nature, Pan Switing, who has a good impression of him, to go astray and finally choose evil means to change her fate. Switing, Deputy General Manager Solitsi of the group, you should be familiar with it. Yeah, Panswitting nodded. Sister Litzy was born in a family that favors boys over girls. She was facing the fate of dropping out of school when she just entered junior high school, but she held on to the belief that knowledge could change her fate. So, in order to continue her studies, she started working part-time at the age of 13. During this period, she worked as a waitress, distributed flyers, picked up waste, set up stalls, did housework, and sold alcohol. At most, she had to do 4 jobs a day. Even in the year when she was preparing for the college entrance examination, she still worked 2 part-time jobs and finally completed the studies of both her and her sister. After graduating from university, she, who also had no family background and support, started as an ordinary salesperson in the sales office of Yongsheng Group, relying on her own persistence and hard work, and eventually became the deputy general manager with an annual salary of millions. First, he briefly introduced Sulitzy's growth experience. Zhang Fengjai looked directly at Panswitting, whose eyes were gradually changing, and asked encouragingly. Shweting, whether it is appearance and figure or education and living conditions, you are slightly better than Sister Litzy. Why don't you want to change your poor fate through your own efforts? Faced with Zhang Fengjai's encouraging questioning, the guilty Panswitting suddenly didn't know how to answer. Shweting, since you are an employee in the office of Yongsheng Group, you must know that Shen Loxi treats me differently. Encouragement can only shake her idea of changing her fate through shortcuts, but if she wants to make her completely confident and truly stand up on her own, there is still a lack of deeper comparison, so Zhang Fengjai can only temporarily drag Shen Loxi into the water. I know. Not to mention the staff in the office, even the cleaning lady can see that Shen Loxi really likes Zhang Fengjai. Otherwise, how can she tolerate him chasing dramas while doing nothing during work, and how can she tolerate his casual absence from work, and always support a monthly salary of up to hundreds of thousands? Shweting, whether in appearance and figure or temperament and family background, Shen Loxi's conditions are far superior to Sister Litzy, but why did I finally choose Sister Litzy and take her back to her hometown to face the elders during the Mid-Autumn Festival? That's because I like Sister Litzy's character that is not easily defeated, I like her courage to do things, I like her tolerance of my shortcomings and selfishness, and I like her ability to manage the family well. Sulitzy's struggle history is like a bowl of chicken soup for the soul, which makes Panswitting's heart full of motivation to work hard. Zhang Fengjai's view on choosing love is like a shot of cardiotonic, which completely changes her inferiority complex and re-establishes her correct belief in changing her destiny with her own hands. Looking directly at Zhang Fengjai with a calm expression, and looking at Panswitting who stood up with her hands, Zhongli Wanran's eyes showed a strange look for the second time. But for Garcia, who successfully completed the transformation in mid-air, Zhang Fengjai's encouragement just now was a humiliation and provocation to their entire race. So, facing Panswitting who gave up turning into a vampire, he said in a tempting tone. The powerful dark magic possessed by the vampires can allow us to gain the power to control the life and death of ordinary people in the shortest time and become nobles respected and feared by the world. The immortal life and the youthful appearance can not only allow us to accumulate inexhaustible wealth, but also allow us to enjoy all the happiness in the world forever. Little girl, there was once an opportunity to become a vampire in front of you, but you didn't cherish it well. You will regret it when you lose it. This is probably the most painful thing in the world. Now, on behalf of God, I give you a chance to choose again. I hope you can say 3 words to me, I do. If you have to add a deadline to this opportunity to choose again, I hope you can say 2 words to me, now. Garcia used the classic lines in Chinese movies and TV shows. Although it sounds very contagious, for Panswitting, who has re-established her faith in life, she is not moved at all except for feeling very ridiculous. So, after she stood up, she gave Garcia a disdainful look and hid directly beside Zhang Fengjai. Very good. Panswitting turned back to the right path in time, which made Zhang Fengjai feel very relieved. He turned his head and looked at her with praise. But it was also a vacuum state without any defense measures, which made the two more upright peaks completely exposed in front of him. However, unlike Zhongli Wanran's reaction of immediately covering up and investigating, facing his naked gaze, Pan Switting not only did not cover up or dodge, but quietly pulled down her loose pajamas, allowing him to see more clearly. Shameless. Pan Switting's deliberately seductive behavior, and Zhang Fengjai's gaze that he didn't immediately avoid, made Zhongli Wanran curse with dissatisfaction and jealousy, but Zhang Fengjai immediately retaliated. Confucius once said, "Food and drink, men and women, are the only way to preserve the great desires of man." After using the saint's words to retaliate, Zhang Fengjai deliberately glanced at the other party's privacy and mocked without hiding the contempt in his eyes. To be honest, it's much prettier than someone's airport. You. Hearing Zhang Fengjai use her most sensitive topic to ridicule herself, Zhongli Wanran was so angry for the first time that she didn't know how to respond. Enough. Pan Switting categorically refused her temptation, and the flirting between Zhang Fengjai and the two beauties, which completely despised her own existence, made Garcia yell with anger, unable to control his heart, and immediately started murderous cast dark magic. But at this moment, Zhang Fengjai suddenly looked up at Garcia and asked, "Garcia, even though I knew you had successfully escaped, I neither immediately stopped you nor got up and ran away. Don't you think it's a little strange?" The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 315. Sangwo Village. Boy, what do you mean? In fact, when he was casting forbidden dark magic and trying his best to break free from the seal of the spell on his heart, Zhang Fengjai chose to turn a blind eye and flirt with Zhongli Wanran, which had already made Garcia suspicious. However, considering that the two swords that were destroyed in the fight just now caused Zhang Fengjai to spit blood and get injured, he thought that the other party might be too seriously injured, unable to stop him from escaping, and unable to get up and run away. At this moment, he suddenly heard Zhang Fengjai take the initiative to raise the stout, which made him unable to help but ask with a slightly changed face. "It's very simple, because your life and death have long been under my control." After Zhang Fengjai gave the answer with a smile, he snapped his fingers with his right hand. Pa! Along with the sound of his fingers, Jia 11 suddenly felt his heart began to ache violently, and a weak impact made the flesh wings behind him gradually difficult to flap and slowly landed on the concrete ground. Afterwards, the energy of the heart was constantly weakened by an inexplicable force, causing him to slowly leave the transformed state. Suddenly standing up and walking in front of Garcia, who had regained his human form, Zhang Fengjai asked with a trace of anger in his eyes. "Garcia, in fact, when I used the lightning-inducing technique of the Chinese Taoist sect to attract the nine heavens' divine thunder to severely injure you, I could have directly shattered your heart and destroyed you, but I didn't do that. Do you know why?" "Why?" Garcia asked with difficulty, raising his head. "Because I want you to accept the judgment of Chinese law, so that the 13 innocent girls who died under your teeth can rest in peace." After hearing the explanation given by Zhang Fengjai, Garcia couldn't help but change his face, and his eyes showed an unwilling look. In fact, on the day when he was given the first embrace by the previous vampire to become a vampire, he was ready to die. However, his so-called death preparation was to die at the hands of the masters of the church, or die in the disputes of interests among his own people, or at the very least be killed by the monks of China, but he never thought of accepting the judgment of ordinary humans, and even died at the hands of ordinary humans in the end. This was a completely unacceptable way of death for Garcia, who usually regarded ordinary humans as ants. Therefore, after his unwilling look was gradually replaced by despair, he immediately had a crazy idea of burning everything down, and immediately used his mind to detonate the remaining energy in his heart, intending to die with Zhang Fengjai. But at this moment, a silver needle appeared out of thin air in Zhang Fenjai's hand and pierced directly into his heart, not only cutting off the control of the remaining energy by the mind, but also completely sealing the induction between him and the heart vein. Garcia, I have said just now that your life and death are all under my control. After retracting the right hand with the needle, Zhang Fenjai said very strongly and domineeringly. If I don't let you die, then you can't die even if you try every possible way to commit suicide. If I want you to live, then even if the prince and ancestors of your blood clan come in person, you will definitely die. Tall body, domineering momentum. The demeanor that Zhang Fenjai showed during Garcia's fate trial was completely imprinted in the hearts of Pan Switing and Zhongli Wanran, leaving an indelible mark forever. And at this moment, the mobile phone in his pocket suddenly moved. Taking out the phone and taking a look, Zhang Fenjai opened his mouth and gave an order after the call was connected. Director Yang, you wait for me on the main road at the entrance of Sangguo village, I will take the prisoner there. After hanging up the phone and putting away the phone, Zhang Fenjai turned around and walked to Pan Switing and Zhongli Wanran. Without any discussion, he directly hugged their waists, and then sent them to the rental house with the Qingfeng step and gave them instructions. Switing, work hard to make money, and then move to a better place to live. After all, the resentment and evil spirits in Sangguo village will stimulate the most primitive instincts and impulses of some people with bad intentions. This is really not safe for two girls with stunning looks and devilish figures. I will try my best, Pan Switing nodded vigorously and promised. Turning back to the rooftop, then pinching Garcia's neck and jumping off the building, she ran straight to the entrance of Sangguo village. After retracting her gaze after Zhang Fenjai left, Zhongli Wanran's tenderness was replaced by firmness, and she said to Pan Switing solemnly. Sister Switing, although I can pretend not to care about some things, and even take the initiative to give in, but when it comes to emotional issues, I will never compromise or let go easily. Sister Wanran, I accept your challenge and see if you, who have a prominent family background, can win the love of that man in the end. Pan Switing stretched out her hand to adjust her loose pajamas, and then raised her breasts provocatively. Humph. Looking down at his slightly inferior privacy, and thinking of Zhang Fenjai's comments about using the airport just now, Zhongli Wanran snorted angrily and walked directly into the rental house. And Pan Jinting followed closely with a smug smile. Hold him. Yang Guozheng took Garcia thrown by Zhang Fenjai and ordered Huang Yiwen and another young policeman who came with him. Then, he asked with concern. Zhang Xiao, you are not injured. I'm fine. After shaking his head, Zhang Fenjai glanced at Garcia who was staring at Huang Yiwen's neck, and solemnly told Yang Guozheng. Director Yang, although this vampire was sealed by me using special means, it is still extremely dangerous, so I hope you can take care of him and get rid of him as soon as possible. No problem, Yang Guozheng nodded and promised immediately. Okay, then you hurry up to interrogate him, and then execute him as soon as possible. I'll go back first. He took out his mobile phone and looked at the time. When he found that there were less than 40 minutes left before the time agreed with Du Yui, he waved his hand and said goodbye. I'll let Yiwen take you, Yang Guozheng quickly suggested. Thanks. No need. After shaking his head to reject Yang Guozheng's kindness, Zhang Fenjai walked directly to a taxi waiting for passengers not far away. When the taxi started to head to the villa in Guanghe Huafu, he called Zhuang Jian and told her in detail about his capture of Garcia alive. Zhuang Jian hung up the phone without saying anything except a simple thank you, which made him start to worry, wondering if Zhuang Jian had encountered any trouble. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 316. Ningji Normal College, in the teacher's apartment building. Zhuang Jian leaned against the window sill, looking at the bright moon outside the window, and gradually revealed a trace of anger and helplessness in her eyes. As the person in charge of monitoring and handling supernatural phenomena in Ningji City, she already knew the identity of the other party's vampire and the strength of the Earl comparable to the Foundation building strongman on the day Garcia just arrived in Ningji City. So, she immediately reported the situation about Garcia to her superiors, and hoped that the superiors could send strongmen in the Foundation building realm to expel Garcia. After all, the vampire of the Earl level is completely beyond her ability to deal with. But the reply from the superiors in the end was completely beyond her imagination. Garcia is just a legal businessman who came to invest and do business. He will strictly abide by the laws of China and conscientiously implement the treaty signed with the Taoist section. He will never do anything to harm the Chinese people. Although she could not refute the orders of her superiors, she had been closely monitoring Garcia with the idea that those who are not of my race must have different hearts. This is why Garcia, who obviously has the powerful strength of the Foundation building realm, has only secretly killed 13 girls for half a year. Perhaps because of the huge gap in strength, or perhaps because Garcia is too cautious, she has never found that he has done anything illegal. It was not until a large number of female corpses with blood lost were found on the bar street, and then combined with the clues found in more than half a year of close surveillance, that she finally knew the real purpose of Garcia's appearance in Ningji City and the means of deceiving those girls. As a city with tourism as its second pillar, Ningji City, with its beautiful environment and profound historical heritage, attracts countless tourists every year. And those young girls who come to play alone are the prey that Garcia uses to improve his cultivation and strength and satisfy his own need for blood. It is precisely because most of the girls who were killed are tourists from other places, even if they disappear unexpectedly, they will not attract too much attention in a short time. As the only Chinese male waiter in the Western restaurant, Xiao Yi is not only a local of Ningji City, but also a top student of the tourism major of the normal college. But his servile nature of worshipping foreigners and his fanatical worship of money made him willing to become Garcia's accomplice, using his own advantages to help Garcia find prey and actively lead them into the Western restaurant. As for the two waitresses and the female cashier at the counter in the Western restaurant, they were also female college students swindled from the technician college by Xiao Yi after a detailed investigation and offered high salaries. Because the three girls were all virgins with their yin intact, the rich yin energy contained in the blood produced in their bodies every day was enough to meet the energy Garcia needed for his usual practice. This is also an important reason why Jia Yaxi has never attracted the attention of the casual cultivators and evil cultivators in Ningji City. Since she had already obtained evidence of Garcia's crime, she immediately made a detailed report to her superiors and asked for support to kill Garcia. But what was the result of the second time? The superior ignored the evidence she had painstakingly investigated and still believed that Garcia was a conscientious investment businessman. Not only did he not send a strong man in the Foundation building realm to reinforce, but he also severely ordered her not to interfere in the female corpse case. The completely unexpected order confirmed Zhang Fenjai's suspicion of the deterioration of the Supernatural Research Institute, and also made her hesitate a little about whether she would continue to serve as the head of the Ningji City Supernatural Research Institute. Just as she was hesitating whether to resign from the position of head, the mobile phone on the desk suddenly rang. She walked to the desk and picked up the phone. When she found that the number displayed on the screen was from her superior, she immediately answered the phone respectfully out of instinctive habit she had developed over the years. Captain Zhuang, immediately use all your spies to investigate who the monk who arrested Garcia is, and then try every means to rescue Count Garcia, who is detained in the criminal police team. Without giving Zhuang Jian any chance to refute or refuse, the superior who gave the order hung up the phone directly, which also made Zhuang Jian, who was furious for the first time at the superior's order, smash the phone hard to the ground. Pa! Looking at the broken phone, Zhuang Jian's anger was burning more and more. After the hesitation in her eyes was quickly replaced by determination, She immediately picked up the car keys on the desk, and then quickly left the teacher's apartment building, started the business car and drove straight to Guanghe Huafu. Guanghe Huafu, Villa number 7. Just when there were 5 minutes left before the time agreed with Du Yue, Zhang Fengjai, who performed the Qingfen technique, successfully returned to the villa. Then, he saw Xiao Yuxuan yawning and chatting with Du Yue, and a warm current suddenly surged in his heart, and he stepped forward and ordered. Yuxuan, go upstairs and rest. Okay, you guys chat first, I'm going to rest. Neither did she ask Zhang Fengjai what he had done just now, nor did she want to listen to the conversation between him and Du Yue. Xiao Yuxuan was like a gentle and virtuous wife. After getting up and giving instructions with a smile, she walked back to her room. After watching Xiao Yuxuan return to the room, Zhang Fengjai lowered his head and carefully observed Du Yue after she had dressed up. A hint of satisfaction flashed in his eyes. Although Du Yue's appearance, figure, and temperament can only be regarded as a very ordinary girl, the lucky palace under her eyes is wide open, and the evil palace above her eyes is slightly closed, indicating that even after 3 years of inhuman torture, her kind nature has not been erased. And this kind and innocent character can basically ensure that she will not betray others after gaining the energy of the 5 evils and becoming powerful. However, he is satisfied, and he still needs to explain some precautions in Taoist practice before giving the other party the energy of the 5 evils. Easy eye, everything in the world has a cause and an effect. After accepting supernatural energy, although you can have power above ordinary people, the law of heaven will give you certain constraints. That is what we often say, people can do wrong but heaven will not, the world will turn around. If you don't believe it, look up and ask who the heaven will spare. So, I hope that after accepting supernatural energy, you can practice by my side for a period of time, and after you have completely formed your own practice values, you can practice in the secular world alone. Brother, I don't understand what you said just now, but I know that you and sister-in-law Yuxuan are both really good to me, and I am willing to accompany you for the rest of my life. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 317. Guanghe Huafu, in Villa number 7. Although the first half of Zhang Fengjai's instructions made Du Yue feel confused, she could barely understand the meaning of the second half. Thinking of her only relative who had been killed when she was abducted, thinking of Zhang Fengjai saving her from the hands of those evil people, thinking of Xiao Yuxuan dressing her up and making delicious food for her, she was immediately moved and quickly expressed her willingness to stay. In response, Zhang Fengjai just smiled with relief, and then motioned Du Yue to sit cross-legged on the blanket in the living room. Then, he mobilized the spiritual power of Danjin to open the eyes of heaven and took a look at the strong yin energy emerging from all around the villa. When the clock struck 12 o'clock in the middle of the night in the living room, he immediately stepped on the condensed mark of the 7 stars and began to guide the strong yin energy emerging from all around the villa, constantly gathering around Du Yue. Yin energy, cool air. As more and more yin qi gathered, the temperature in the living room became lower and lower. Even though she was wearing a long coat and long pants made of pure cotton, Du Yue was still shivering from the cold. Fortunately, the 3 years of inhuman torture made her endurance extremely strong, and she quickly adapted to this rapidly cooling environment. There was only expectation and tension in her eyes, without a trace of fear or fear. When the temperature in the hall dropped to 0 degrees due to the gathering of dense yin qi, Zhang Fengjai quickly took out the talisman that sealed the 5 evils from his sleeves, and then used his spiritual power to remove the sword seal of the talisman. When the seal of the talisman was released, the 5 evils energy composed of resentment, evil spirit, blood, yin, and resentment roared towards Du Yue, and then rushed into her body frantically. Blessed by the 5 evils energy, Du Yue, who was originally sitting cross-legged on the ground, slowly floated up, and a momentum of a realm breakthrough quickly rose from her head. Seeing the increasing momentum, Zhang Fengjai began to continuously impact the decorative lights and ceiling above his head. He immediately used his spiritual power to condense a sharp sword without any surprise or nervousness. While throwing the sharp sword above his head, he used the sword dividing technique of Tiandiwuji, and began to control the momentum formed by Du Yui's realm breakthrough with 16 sharp swords to avoid impact and damage to the villa building. This is the five evils initiation, condensing the evil body. Just as the energy of the five evils continued to improve Du Yui's realm, Zhuang Jian, who rushed to the villa, couldn't help but shout out, "Teacher Zhuang, please restrain your own spiritual energy to avoid causing hostility from the five evils energy in EE's body and destroying the transformation of the evil body." Zhang Fengjai was not surprised by Zhuang Jian's sudden visit. Nodding silently, Zhuang Jian closed her eyes to adjust her own breath. After completely restraining the unique breath of a cultivator, she stepped into the villa and carefully observed Du Yui. The more she observed, the more shocked she felt. Because she found that the little girl floating in the air actually had the potential to condense the evil spirit of the evil pill. Although the evil pill is not as good as the real golden pill, its strength is far superior to the strong men in the foundation stage and the half-step golden pill stage. It is a terrifying strong man who can shake the ground with the stomp of his feet. As the realm broke through to the peak of the 9th level of chi condensation, the rising momentum began to weaken continuously, which made Zhang Fengjai, who had retracted the sword, flash a look of disappointment and relief in his eyes. Originally, the five evil energy accumulated for more than 3 years could allow Du Yui to successfully advance to the foundation stage. But without any experience and perception of cultivation, nearly 1/3 of the five evil energy was wasted, and there was not much resentment in her heart, which wasted nearly 1/3 of the five evil energy, and finally led to the failure of the realm breakthrough. However, because there was no resentment in her heart for wasting 1/3 of the five evil energy, it just showed that she was a kind-hearted girl, so there was no need to worry too much about her regretful behavior of repaying kindness with enmity in the future, which was also the important reason why relief could replace disappointment. Seeing Du Yui slowly falling on the blanket, it took a long time to adapt before she could wake up from the perception of the realm. Zhang Fengjai's eyes went directly to Zhuang Jian. "Yezi, 33 minutes ago, I suddenly received an order from my superiors to investigate the origins of the monks who captured and sealed Garcia, and to find a way to rescue Garcia, who was detained in the criminal police team." Facing Zhang Fengjai's gaze, Zhuang Jian said without hiding anything. When he heard Zhuang Jian reveal the order issued by the superiors of the Supernatural Research Institute, Zhang Fengjai couldn't help but frown. In fact, when it was confirmed this afternoon that Garcia was the murderer of the female corpse case and informed Zhuang Jian as soon as possible, Zhuang Jian's silent response made him vaguely guess that Garcia had a close relationship with a strong man in the Supernatural Research Institute. Otherwise, in the face of conclusive evidence, the Supernatural Research Institute would not have made an order to turn a blind eye. But after learning that Garcia was arrested and sealed, the Supernatural Research Institute suddenly changed its attitude to track him down, and asked Zhuang Jian to do everything possible to rescue Garcia. The information revealed in the process was a bit complicated and strange. Thinking of this, Zhang Fengjai immediately took out his mobile phone and began to contact Yang Guo's Hung, asking him to immediately escort Garcia to the interrogation room of the Criminal Police Brigade, and send someone to wait for him in front of the police station. After hanging up the phone, he ordered Zhuang Jian, "Teacher Zhuang, please accompany me to the interrogation room of the Criminal Police Brigade." "No problem." Zhuang Jian also wanted to know why her superiors were so protective of Garcia, so she nodded and agreed quickly. He turned and walked to Du Yui, and used the 3 silver needles that appeared out of thin air in his hand to pierce her Shaiyan, Sanyang, and Sanyan meridian acupoints respectively, ensuring that she could hear his instructions without affecting her realm perception. "Easy, Big Brother is going out now, and I don't know when he can come back. If you complete the realm perception in advance, go back to your room and rest." After the instructions, he took back the silver needles that were inserted into the Sanyan meridian acupoints, nodded to Zhuang Jian and walked out of the villa. In the interrogation room of the Criminal Police Brigade, under the personal leadership of Yang Guozheng, Zhang Fengjai and Zhuang Jian came to the interrogation room where Garcia was interrogated. After driving Yang Guozheng and the other two policemen out of the interrogation room, Zhang Fengjai signaled Zhuang Jian to mobilize the Danshan spiritual power to block the surveillance of the camera, and then stretched out his hand and pressed hard on the silver needle at the heart of Garcia. As a Taoist weapon, the silver needle can not only cause more serious damage to the heart, but also amplify the pain caused by the damage without limit, which makes Garcia howl in pain. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 318. In the interrogation room of the Criminal Police Brigade. Just when Garcia started to roll his eyes and was about to faint, Zhang Fengjai suddenly retracted his palms and sat on the chair, then asked with an indifferent expression. "Garcia, say it." After gasping for breath for a while, Garcia's face gradually returned to normal, and he asked angrily. "Damn boy, what do you want me to say? Who is the powerful Chinese man who protects you? What are the shameful things between you?" When he heard that Zhang Fengjai wanted to know who the powerful Chinese man who was secretly protecting him was, Garcia couldn't help but change his expression, and then glared at Zhuang Jian angrily. "Since you choose Ningji City as your hunting ground, you must know the specific situation of Ningji City's supernatural powerhouses beforehand. So, as the official representative stationed in Ningji City, Zhuang Jian is the first person he needs to understand and investigate in detail. Zhuang Jian, who has fully received military training, is not only loyal to the Supernatural Research Institute, but will also unconditionally execute the orders issued by her superiors. Therefore, after learning that he had been captured alive and sealed, the strong man who had a special deal with his family would definitely arrange for Zhuang Jian, who was familiar with and controlled Ningji City, to rescue him as soon as possible. At the same time, when Zhang Fengjai captured and sealed himself, he did not mention anything about secretly protecting the strong man. Why did he have to interrogate him all night long? The reason must lie in Zhuang Jian, who is familiar with and understands the Supernatural Research Institute and can receive rescue orders. Crack. After reaching out and snapping his fingers to remind Garcia, Zhang Fengjai stretched out 3 fingers and threatened. 3 numbers. "Garcia, if you still haven't answered my question after the 3-count period, then I don't mind letting you truly experience what it means to be tortured." Facing Zhang Fengjai's threat, Garcia's eyes immediately showed a look of struggle. Because the strong man who secretly protected him was too special in terms of cultivation and strength, identity and status. If it is leaked, it will easily cause a conflict between the Chinese Empire and the Unfallen Empire, and lead to a bloody battle between the Chinese Taoist sects and monsters and the Western Holy See and alien races. 3. While retracting the first finger, Zhang Fengjai shouted softly. 2. While retracting the second finger, Zhang Fengjai shouted loudly. 1. While retracting the third finger, Zhang Fengjai shouted violently, stood up and walked directly in front of Garcia, then stretched out his hand to pinch the silver needle that pierced the heart, preparing to use Nezanea Hai's torture method. Taoist Master Liao Chen. The strong man who protects me secretly is Taoist Master Liao Chen, who is known as the One-Sword Wrong Tracer. Just when Zhang Fengjai pinched the silver needle that sealed the heart, the instant pain and the fear of pain and torture caused the struggling look in Garcia's eyes to be immediately replaced by panic, and he quickly shouted out the secret to protect the strong man. Number. This is impossible. Just when Garcia shouted out the secret code to protect the strong, Zhuang Jian quickly retorted in disbelief and acceptance. Taoist Master Liao Chen is not only one of the founders of the Supernatural Research Institute, a top expert who has touched the realm of golden elixir, but he is also a hardliner who firmly believes that those who are not my race will have different hearts. it is impossible for him to will secretly protect a vampire who has done many evil things. He. When he heard Zhuang Jian's reasons for rebuttal, Garcia, who had completely abandoned his fears, sneered twice and said with a mocking tone. There is an old saying in China, it is difficult to draw a dragon or a tiger, but it is difficult to draw a skeleton when you know a person's face but not his heart. Captain Zhuang, you are just a loser who was given up by the Supernatural Research Institute. What qualifications and abilities do you have to truly understand this earthly Taoist priest who is a very human minister? You. Facing Garcia's ridicule, Zhuang Jian, who felt powerless, didn't know how to refute. After all, what the other party just said was right. Because with her status as a loser, let alone truly understanding the other party, she was not even qualified to see the other party, so she had no confidence to refute Garcia. After retracting the right hand holding the silver needle, Zhang Fengjai sat back on the chair and asked. Account level vampire is equivalent to the early stage of foundation building in our Taoist section, so with your identity and strength, Garcia, I am afraid that you are not qualified to meet and talk with Taoist Master Chen. So, what are the shady things going on between your vampire family and Taoist Master Luo Chen? Boy, I dare to say it. Do you dare to listen? After straightening his body with his chest raised and his head raised, Garcia said provocatively with a sneer on his face. Teacher Zhuang, please go out first. Since Taoist Master Ling Chen is one of the founders of the Supernatural Research Institute, the secret transactions between him and Garcia's vampire family must involve the interests of the Taoist sect, the demon clan and the country. With Zhuang Jian's loyalty and belief in the Supernatural Research Institute, it is neither suitable nor convenient for her to know the content of the specific transaction. Therefore, Zhang Fengjai turned to Zhuang Jian and ordered. Zhuang Jian, who could understand Zhang Fengjai's painstaking efforts in letting him leave the interrogation room, but still chose to believe in the character of Taoist Master Chen, gave a special reminder before turning around and leaving the interrogation room. Yezi, vampires are a cunning race, and what he says cannot be believed 100% of the time. Teacher Zhuang, don't worry, I know what's going on. After smiling and nodding his head to assure, Zhang Fengjai stood up and came back to Garcia, then stretched out his hand to pinch the silver needle that had pierced his heart and warned him. Garcia, this silver needle in your heart is a very rare Taoist weapon in the Chinese Taoism. It can not only cut off the control of your thoughts from the source of energy, but also accurately sense the slight changes in your breath, so I don't want to hear a single lie. Boy, I want to warn you in advance that the secret of the transaction between Taoist Master Liao Chen and our Marquez family involves not only your Chinese Taoism, the demon clan and the evil cultivators, but also our Western Church and the Wolf clan. Faced with Zhang Fengjai's warning, Garcia, who had completely broken the jar, warned him without fear. The specific content of the transaction will not only bring you unimaginable psychological shock and pressure, but may also cause you to suffer an irresistible fatal disaster. Thank you for your reminder, please start your speech. Facing Garcia's warning, Zhang Fengjai responded calmly. Since you want to seek your own death, then I will fulfill your wish next. Afterwards, Garcia began to talk about the transaction that the Marquez family had reached with Taoist Master Lechen, and the earth-shaking impact that the successful transaction brought to the entire cultivation world and the secular world. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 319. In the interrogation room of the Criminal Police Brigade. After talking about the transaction for more than 3 hours, Garcia asked with a proud smile on his face. Boy, how are you? Do you feel that your worldview has completely collapsed? Do you regret knowing the contents of the transaction now? After retracting the right hand holding the silver needle, Zhang Fengjai flashed a disdainful sneer in his eyes and stepped towards the door of Sung Suan. When I returned to my hometown during the Mid-Autumn Festival on August 15, I once discussed the Supernatural Research Institute with the elders in my family. I believed that the Supernatural Research Institute, which brings together the vast majority of resources and elites in the secular world, will definitely completely change the entire Chinese Taoist sect, demon clan, and society in the future. The situation of evil cultivators. But the family elders gave such a ridiculous and overestimating comment. Originally, I had always been skeptical about the evaluation of the family elders, but after hearing the inside story of your family's transaction with Master Chen, I finally understood and believed that the evaluation of the family elders was so accurate. At this moment, I also have a similar comment to you, the Marquez family and Taoist Master Liao Chen, that is, your heart is as high as the sky, and your life is as thin as paper. After closing the door of the interrogation room, Zhang Fengjai ordered Yang Guozheng, who was guarding the door. Director Yang, use all the energy available to try to execute Garcia within 7 days and send him back to Kane's arms completely. The evidence collected by the Public Security Department is transferred to the Procuratorate. After reviewing the transferred evidence, the Procuratorate files a public prosecution in the court, and then conducts a trial and the final verdict. Even if some means beyond the rules are used, it will take at least 3 months. What's more, Garcia is not only a foreigner who has not fallen into the empire, but also a noble with the status of earl, and may also be involved in diplomatic issues. Therefore, facing Zhang Fengjai's order, Yang Guozheng suddenly felt very embarrassed and didn't know how to reply. Zhang Fengjai, who didn't understand the process of trying criminals in China, didn't notice Yang Guozheng's embarrassed look. He nodded to Zhuang Jian, who had an expectant look in his eyes, and then walked away from the police station and back to the commercial car. Teacher Zhuang, please contact the leader of the Supernatural Research Institute now and tell the truth who the Taoist monk who captured Garcia is. Seeing Zhuang Jian sitting in the driver's seat, silently not driving away, Zhang Fengjai knew that she wanted to know the secret revealed by Garcia. But with her status as a paranormal research institute, if she knew the specific content of the transaction, then, as Garcia warned, the consequences will be that the worldview she has always adhered to will completely collapse, and the faith she has always guarded will be completely shattered. In the end, it may cause the backlash of her inner demons, ranging from the loss of her cultivation to the loss of her soul in the worst case. Therefore, after careful consideration, he could only use the method of changing the subject to dispel her desire to know the contents of the transaction. Yi, isn't this too risky? Compared to Zhang Fengjai's safety, the secret revealed by Garcia was not that important, so Zhuang Jian immediately turned around and asked nervously. Teacher Zhuang, the moment I handed Garcia to Director Yang, it indicated that it was impossible to keep my identity secret. So even if you don't report it, the Supernatural Research Institute can use other methods to report it in a short time. It will be investigated internally, Zhang Fengjai reminded with a smile. Yi, if the Supernatural Research Institute sends strong men to arrest you, what should we do? She nodded and agreed with the explanation given by Zhang Fengjai, but Zhuang Jian was even more worried about the subsequent revenge of the Supernatural Research Institute. Teacher Zhuang, don't worry. Looking at the police station's office building through the car window, Zhang Fengjai said with a cold light flashing in his eyes. Unless the Supernatural Research Institute can send a top expert who has touched the Golden Core realm, if a strong person from the Foundation establishment realm comes here, I will kill one. If a pair comes, I will kill a pair. If a group of strong men come, I will kill a group. After long-term contact, Zhuang Jian knew that Zhang Fengjai was a cautious person. Since he was not afraid of retaliation from the Supernatural Research Institute, he must have a way to fight back, so her attention immediately focused on the second order given by her superiors, which was how to rescue Garcia, who was being held in the police station. Simple. Just when he used the method of changing the topic to dispel Zhuang Jian's idea of asking about the inside story of the transaction, Zhang Fengjai had already thought about how to deal with it in advance. Teacher Zhuang, just tell the superiors directly that I, Zhang Fengjai, have already announced that anyone who dares to rescue Garcia will be prepared to be killed. At the same time, it is also investigated that I have been secretly lurking. Garcia is being guarded around the police station. In this case, you will not be able to use your identity as a supernatural research institute to take Garcia away, but you will also be unable to use your strength as a monk to intercept the prison. Yi, are you planning to challenge the Supernatural Research Institute head-on? Zhuang Jian asked with a slightly shocked expression after hearing the countermeasures given by Zhang Fengjai. That's right, after a complicated look flashed in his eyes, Zhang Fengjai nodded and admitted. All right. Since Zhang Fengjai had the confidence to confront the Supernatural Research Institute head-on, Zhuang Jian started the business car without saying anything and went straight to the municipal library of Ningji City. Because the special mobile phone used to contact her superiors had been broken, she could only contact the Supernatural Research Institute through the means reserved in the library. Looking at Zhuang Jian sneaking into the library, Zhang Fengjai, who did not follow, whispered a sentence in his mouth. After the spiritual energy was revived, he mobilized the spiritual power of Danshan to open the eyes of heaven, and then carefully observed the subtle changes in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the air outside the car window. I don't know if it's because his own cultivation is too low, or Garcia revealed false information. After nearly 5 minutes of careful observation, he didn't find any changes in the spiritual energy between heaven and earth. However, according to the induction of the Taoist silver needle, Garcia did not lie at the time, so the secret used by the Marquez family to trade with Taoist master Lechen was probably a complete conspiracy. But considering that Taoist master Lechen is already a top strong man who has touched the golden elixir realm and his strength is comparable to that of a duke-level vampire, the Marquez family should not have the courage to deceive. So, after dispersing the spiritual power to open the eyes of heaven, he decided to wait until he returned to the Zhang family in Shushan on New Year's Eve, and then interrogate his third grandfather to see if there were any changes in the spiritual energy revival between heaven and earth. At this time, Zhuang Jian returned to the car with a serious look in her eyes, and reminded with a worried look in her eyes. Yes, although the superiors did not give clear instructions, but according to my understanding of the Supernatural Research Institute, in the next 2 to 3 days, the superiors should send a large number of strong people in the foundation building realm to encircle you. Very good. After hearing Zhuang Jian's reminder, Zhang Fengjai sneered with a slight smile on his face. It's a good opportunity to let the people in the Supernatural Research Institute know that even if I, Zhang Fengjai, am a casual cultivator, they still can't afford to offend me easily. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 320. Air Shilapur, located in the east of Ningji City, is between the urban and rural areas. It is a town with well-developed transportation and relatively good economic conditions. Yanglia village, where the Air Shilapur town government is located, is the most populous and economically prosperous village in the entire town. At the same time, it is also one of the 3 villages that Zhulang Group is developing this time. In the business car leading to Yanglia village, Du Yui, with a curious look on her face, looked at the endless cornfields and mulberry fields outside the car window and couldn't help but sigh. Sister-in-law Yuxuan, your hometown is so beautiful. Zhang Fengjai had explained to Du Yui several times in private about Xiao Yuxuan's sister-in-law title, saying that he already had a formal girlfriend and that he and Xiao Yuxuan were just good friends. But she just recognized that Xiao Yuxuan was the most qualified person to be her girlfriend, and she was unwilling to call her sister, which made Zhang Fengjai feel helpless and could only follow her. Yes. Xiao Yuxuan, who was also looking at the scenery outside the car window, sighed with a trace of memories in her eyes. Before I went to high school and college, my sister and I had been living here. During the busy farming season, I took my sister to work in the fields. When I was free, I took my sister to dig wild vegetables, catch sparrows, catch scorpions, pick mulberry leaves, and pick mulberry fruits. Although life was relatively poor, I felt very happy in life. But now, thinking of her sister's ashes that had been cremated by the talisman and kept in the villa, Xiao Yuxuan's eyes were red and she was about to cry. Yuxuan, don't think too much, and don't be too sad, I'm still by your side. Zhang Fengjai held Xiao Yuxuan's jade hand tightly, and said with a trace of tenderness in his eyes. Sister-in-law Yuxuan, in addition to your big brother, you still have me. Du Yue quickly hugged her arm and gestured. Yes. I still have you. Looking at Zhang Fengjai and Du Yue with tenderness in her eyes, Xiao Yuxuan smiled reluctantly and nodded. Yuxuan, given the geographical location of Yanglia village, you will probably be able to get a lot of real estate and compensation for the demolition project of the old village renovation this time. Zhuang Jian, who understands women's minds better than Zhang Fengjai, did not comfort Xiao Yuxuan abruptly, but used the demolition compensation that could quickly divert attention to let Xiao Yuxuan quickly get out of her sister's memories. The real estate and money of the demolition compensation will determine whether she will have the capital to compete with Solitsi in the future and the foundation for building a warm new home with Zhang Fengjai. So, Xiao Yuxuan, who quickly got rid of the feeling of missing, introduced with a slightly happy smile on her face. I don't know much about the specific compensation plan for the demolition, but a second uncle from my family called me some time ago and said that according to the building area of the residential house, a 1-to-1 exchange of 0.5 will be carried out, and the compensation for arable land will be 45,000 yuan per mu. Although the house in my hometown has been sold long ago, I bought it again with the money I earned from working before the new year. At least I can exchange it for 2 houses of more than 90 square meters, and the 4.5 mu of arable land can also get more than 200,000 yuan in compensation. When hearing the compensation plan introduced by Xiao Yuxuan, Zhuang Jian, who had dealt with Kowloon Group several times, couldn't help but sigh in her heart. I really didn't expect that with the vampire style of Chairman Chen of Kowloon Group, this time the compensation plan would be so generous. Zhang Fengjai, who also had 3 indirect encounters with Kowloon Group, vaguely felt that things were not as simple as Xiao Yuxuan introduced. So, when he planned to secretly use Xiao Yuxuan's birth date to calculate whether the final result of this demolition compensation would be smooth, Xiao Yuxuan suddenly pointed to a cement road next to the village and reminded him. Sister Yan, the cemetery is on the east side of the village, near the woods on the Yanggong River. When the business car turned into the cement road to the cemetery, Zhang Fengjai was suddenly shocked by the feng shui layout in front of him, and hurriedly signaled. Teacher Zhuang, speed up. Okay. The cement road leading to the end of the cemetery not only has a very wide field of vision, but there is not even a pedestrian on the road, so after Zhuang Jian responded, she stepped on the accelerator and rushed to the cemetery. I don't know whether it was deliberately built or naturally in this shape. The Yanggong River near the east side of the cemetery is like a giant python with its body bent forward. To the south of the cemetery is an area of nearly 1,000 acres of sandy red mud, and its shape is very similar to a big bird flying high. To the west of the cemetery is the village of Yanglia village. The layout of the houses in the entire village looks like a sleeping beast. To the north of the cemetery is a relatively low-lying mulberry field, which looks like the footprints of a giant beast. At the same time, except for the faint sound of wind, there was no sound of insects or grasshoppers in the entire cemetery, giving people a feeling of silence, gloom, and horror. Retracting his attention from the feng shui layout of the cemetery, Zhang Fengjai used his open eyes to look up and observe the sky above his head. Then, he turned around and walked into the mulberry field, squatted in the middle and started digging. Finally, relying on his strong body, he dug up a huge turtle statue at a depth of 1.9 meters. Looking at the gray python snake on the back of the turtle statue, he flashed a look of surprise in his eyes, buried the soil again, and then stood up and returned to the crowd, saying to Xiao Yuxuan, who was full of doubts in her eyes. Yuxuan, I will choose a cemetery with excellent feng shui for your parents and see you in the cemetery forest. Yezi, what's the matter? After hearing Zhang Fenjai's suggestion to Xiao Yuxuan, Zhuang Jian couldn't help but frown and asked. Because this time I drove to the cemetery in Yanglia village to see how the feng shui of the cemetery where Xiao Yuxuan's parents were buried was. If it was a rare feng shui treasure land, then she would use her power as the head of the Supernatural Research Institute to make a judgment with the Zhulang group and do her best to protect the integrity and tranquility of this cemetery. If it was just an ordinary cemetery, then Zhang Fenjai would use his proficiency in the yin-yang and five elements technique to reselect a feng shui treasure land with an excellent location for Xiao Yuxuan's parents and sister, and then bury them again. Now, he neither entered the cemetery to check the feng shui environment in detail, nor did he take the time to go to other places to select feng shui treasure lands, but directly decided to move the grave to the cemetery forest. How could this not make Zhuang Jian feel strange? Teacher Zhuang, use the spiritual power in your dantian to open your third eye, and then carefully observe the environment around the cemetery. Without directly answering Zhuang Jian's question, Zhang Fenjai asked her to observe and discover the anomalies of the feng shui of the cemetery herself.